Hello everyone, Happy New Year, my name is Nick, and today I wanted to talk about my personal picks for top 5 pink plants. So pink houseplants have become quite the trend on social media lately, with the homage to the movie Mean Girls hashtag on Wednesdays we plant pink, where on Wednesday, or whatever day of the week people want, they post pictures of their pink plants. However, I kind of think when you move past green plants, moving into more colorful plants, which I absolutely adore, they can sometimes be a little bit more difficult to grow, and some of these more Instagram famous pink plants I think are a little bit more difficult. So I wanted to share my personal picks for 5 easy, wonderful pink plants to grow in your home. First, or number 5 for top 5 pink plants, is going to be the ever so popular Philodendron erubescens pink princess. And this plant, I would almost dare to say, is a bit overrated due to the toll that social media has taken on it, but I have to talk about it today because while it's incredibly beautiful and a little overrated, as I said, because of the way that the availability and the pricing are just fluctuating all over the place constantly, this plant's really easy to grow. I've been growing this plant for probably about 3 years now. I think this is actually one of the first plants I ever unboxed here on YouTube a few years ago. And I have cut it back quite a bit, you can see, but it's grown quite a lot since I have brought it into my home. I have to say, while it's been really easy to grow, it's really taken off since I moved it underneath my Soltech Solutions grow light, which you can see back there. So you can see a few leaves back down here that, while they have the pink, they're just not really big and beautiful. You can even see how weird this leaf looks. So I think right here is when I was like, you know what, I need to make a change. And I moved it underneath the Soltech Solutions grow light, and I've gotten some really beautiful leaves since then. So shameless plug, I will leave my discount code on the screen for you guys if you're interested in getting a Soltech Solutions Aspect Light. This plant is just so beautiful. It really doesn't seem to mind standard household conditions. It really does appreciate a little bit more light. In fact, I will say that the reason why this leaf is so pink is definitely as it's growing up towards closer to the Soltech Solutions grow light. I have heard that these are not very stable in terms of variegation, where they can sometimes go completely white or pink or go completely green on you, and so people are always kind of wary about that. I feel like mine has kind of bounced back and forth a lot over the last 3 years. I feel like I actually purchased this like completely without any pink variegation on it, and then it just like randomly started getting pink, and then it's just been doing like literally going back and forth over the last 3 years. So I can't really speak for sure on that. I'm no expert in that sense at all, but I've really enjoyed watching this plant grow. It's almost been like somewhat of a science experiment for me. So yeah, Philodendron Pink Princess or Philodendron Erubescens Pink Princess, absolutely have to talk about it for one of the top 5 pink plants. Number 4 is going to be Cryptanthus bivittatus Pink Star. And this plant is so incredibly easy to grow. I just will say, in order to keep up this bright pink color, you do need to give this plant a lot of light. Whether it's a bright windowsill or a grow light that's very close to it, you definitely need the light to hold up this color. In fact, I tried growing this plant a little bit deeper into my home, and it really got green, or just all green pretty much, no pink. But as soon as I moved it back into a bright windowsill, that pink coloration came back. So I will say it doesn't seem to lose its color forever. It does seem to brighten back up with sunlight without having to put off new growth. So that's something I will point out about these. The Cryptanthus come in a bunch of different colors: reds, blacks, greens, of course. I'm sure there's more colors than that, but this is the one that I think is just so vibrant and so incredible. It really stands out amongst the rest in my home, and as I said, it's just so incredibly easy to grow. These are incredibly drought tolerant. They're actually in the same family as bromeliads and air plants. However, I find that they are way more drought tolerant than bromeliads and air plants. So I probably water this plant at least like every 2 weeks, but I probably am doing it between every week and every 2 weeks. It just depends when I remember to, honestly. But it doesn't really show very much sign of drought. I'm sure it would take quite a while for this plant to start to actually like wrinkle up. You can see right here that this is kind of a bit of a mound of Cryptanthus. So when I purchased this as one plant in the pot, it actually then flowered. And after these plants flower, which is not a very spectacular flower compared to some other bromeliads, the plant will eventually start to put off pups. So that's what's going on here. So if I'm not mistaken, this main plant is actually slowly dying, and then all of these plant pups are taking the energy from this mother plant. So in a year or two, I'll probably have to consider taking these plants off, but for now, I just absolutely love the way it looks as just a giant mound of Cryptanthus. As I said, this plant is totally underrated. I highly recommend growing these plants. They are so incredibly easy, and they have such a nice vibrant color as long as you have bright enough light. Number 3 for top 5 pink plants is going to be Tradescantia spathacea variegata. And this plant is also very, very easy to grow. I have been growing this plant in my home going on probably 4 or 5 years now, and it's just been such a joy. It's transformed a lot over time. When I first purchased this, I got it at a big box store. It was just one little stem coming out of the pot, and I just loved the color, so I brought it home. And slowly over time, it got too tall, it started to fall over, and then slowly the leaves from the bottom started to die, and I was just having like this internal plant parent freak out, but I just didn't know how this plant grows. I didn't realize it's more of a hanging basket style plant. So the lower leaves, as they started to die, all these little shoots started to come out, and it was just turning into this beautiful hanging basket. So this plant, actually I want to say real quick, while I was pulling it out of the macrame hanger that I have, I knocked off some Peperomia polybatria flowers into my face, and these things smell like dirty laundry or like old towels. They're horrible. But I've also knocked pieces off this plant pretty readily. I actually knocked one off just about a week or two ago, and they root up so fast. I am not kidding when I say I put this in water maybe a week or two. Like no more than 14 days ago, I put this plant in water, and it has rooted up this much. And we're in the winter time, so this plant just roots so fast. I have literally never had a plant root faster than this plant. This plant is very, very closely related to what they commonly refer to as wandering Jew, which is Tradescantia zebrina, and many other Tradescantias like the purple heart or the Tradescantia pallida. There's so many other Tradescantias, but I don't find many of them that easy to grow. In fact, one of the more popular pink Tradescantias, the Tradescantia fluminensis tricolor, which they call, I think that plant's a little bit more difficult to grow. I do grow it in my home, but I just haven't had as much luck with that plant as I had with this one. This plant definitely gets much more vibrant with bright light, so I've been consistently growing this plant in either a south or west facing window depending on the apartment that I was living in throughout the time that I've had this plant, and it's been such a joy to grow. As I said, it's transformed so much over time. You can see inside the pot how it's just one thing, but it's just going all over the place, and all these shoots are coming out. It's a little underrated. It's definitely a bit underrated. People just don't tend to know what it is, but I find when I do have it in the stores, specifically in hanging baskets, it does sell pretty well. So people are into it. I just don't think it's that talked about that much, honestly. So it's such an incredible plant, definitely worth talking about today for one of my top 5 pink plants. Number 2 is none other than my variegated string of hearts, or Ceropegia woodii variegata. Now, this lovely succulent is very, very easy to grow given you give it enough light. So I would say if you're in the northern hemisphere, it would be best to grow this plant in a west or south facing window, or you could grow this plant underneath the grow light, but mind you, when it does start to trail, it's probably going to prefer a setting where it's going to be getting a lot more light around it than just from the top down from a grow light. So I have this one hanging in a window, like hanging directly in the window, and I think that is like the best conditions for this plant, and it really seems to grow exponentially and really get that nice pink coloration that this plant is known for. So I'm asked pretty often about the pink color on this plant. People often say that their plant is just green and white, and I'd say it definitely takes time and light for this plant to get more pink. It definitely needs that sunlight to really like store in the energy, and then they'll start to get that pink color. You can see some of the leaves inside the pot are just kind of like dyed pink almost, and while these other ones down here really just have pink backsides. But yeah, it definitely takes more time for more pink, but that light is definitely going to aid in it getting more pink. The one thing about this plant is it usually isn't inexpensive. It's not necessarily the most expensive plant. It's not going to cost you hundreds of dollars, but for example, at my work, I sell small 2.5-inch pots for $24.99, which seems outrageous, but when you see how much I pay for them, it's not. But people are, every day, it's actually kind of hilarious when people are like, is this right? And I'm like, yes. It's getting a little old, but happens every day. But this plant is just never sold in large abundance. It's usually very, very small. Mind you, I did purchase my plant very, very small as well, and it has grown exponentially over time. If you hear about this plant, you're going to hear it's a slow grower. I don't think it's as slow as people fable that it is, but it's definitely not a fast grower. So you definitely need to be patient and persistent with this plant. Number 1 for my top 5 pink houseplants is going to be Peperomia griseo-argentea pink Lady. Now this peperomia is so pink. It's got these bright pink stems, and it also has these lovely salmon splotchy leaves. It's so gorgeous. You can see I have a bunch of even more pink leaves kind of underneath. They're just kind of shielded by these older leaves as the newer ones are growing in. But I love this plant. I don't think it's necessarily new in cultivation. If I'm being real, I don't think it's actually been like noticed that often until recently. But I'm really happy to see that this plant is kind of starting to make a come up. It's been so fun to grow in my home. I absolutely love the pink color. I think it looks so fun in this little circular pot. I love everything about it. I love peperomias. I usually don't have that much good luck with Peperomia caparata, which looks very similar to this. It's the ripple peperomia, but this is a slightly different, different species. This is Peperomia griseo-argentea. So for me, the care just seems to be a little bit more easy. I'm not sure if everybody else will have the same experience, but for me, this plant has been a breeze to grow. I do grow this one directly underneath a grow light, so maybe that's why this plant has been a little bit more easygoing for me. And it is in a higher humidity environment. I do keep the humidity in my bedroom typically between 50 and 60%, which isn't outrageous, but it's still good enough for the plants to be happy. And it seems to have been really enjoying it. I absolutely love the way it looks. It's so fun. I'm watering this when it's dry, so it does dry out pretty quickly underneath the grow light. I'm probably watering this every week, maybe every 10 days. And if I'm watering it not enough, it'll wilt. It'll pretty visibly wilt. And then within watering in a day or two, it'll perk back up and be very upright, as you can see as it is now. If you notice an alarming amount of leaves turning yellow, it's typically a sign of peperomias that they're being inconsistently watered, either too much or too little. So do be mindful. However, if you do water peperomias too much, they're very quick to rot. So I can tell with this, it's definitely from my inconsistent watering. It's kind of erring on the underwatering side, but this is such a beautiful plant. I'm so happy it started to make a come up in the last year or so. If you can get your hands on it, I would highly recommend it. It's typically not very expensive at all. It's usually the same cost as other peperomias in the store as far as I've seen. So if you can find this one, highly recommend picking it up. Alrighty, thank you guys so much for joining me today to talk about my top 5 picks for pink houseplants. I honestly only have like 10 to 15 pink plants in my home, so it was a lot of fun to narrow down the plants that I have into an even smaller list. So just to recap, it was Philodendron erubescens pink princess, Cryptanthus bivittatus pink star, Tradescantia spathacea variegata, Ceropegia woodii variegata, and Peperomia griseo-argentea pink lady. And I'll definitely leave a list of those in the description below in case you want to look them up on your own time. So thank you guys again for watching. If you don't already, follow me on Instagram at phillyfoliage, subscribe to my channel, and I will see you guys in my next video. Have a great day!